I'm continuing my discussion of Dante, who is, last time we left him, in a dark wood and confronted suddenly by his own hero, a fellow poet, a poet who lived many centuries before Dante, named Virgil, a pagan poet, a Roman, the author of a great work called the Aeneid. And the Aeneid is the story of a guy named Aeneas. Who's Aeneas? He's a Trojan soldier. And in the Trojan War, the Trojans lost. The Greeks burned Troy. And Aeneas went on a long journey, which culminated in him founding a new city called Rome, which would eventually surpass Greece in power and importance. Along the way, Aeneas has a love affair with a queen named Dido. And it's a tragic love affair because he has to leave. He can't stay. He has, in a sense, you may say, the historical and moral responsibility to found this new city, and Dido commits suicide. So Dante, as a love poet, admires Virgil, and Dante, as an epic poet, looks up to Virgil. And yet, when Dante says to Virgil something like, "Wow, I'm really happy to see you, you're my hero," Virgil doesn't really go for any of that. And the reason is that Virgil has been sent. He's been pulled out of his own place in, as it turns out, hell. We'll find out where Virgil is in hell. But nevertheless, he's been dispatched to get Dante and take him on a journey through the underworld, through the afterlife, or at least part of it. Virgil can't take him all the way. The mission is actually conceived by the Virgin Mary herself. She takes pity on Dante, and she enlists a woman named Beatrice. Now, Beatrice was the subject of some of Dante's earlier love poetry. But here, Beatrice has been transformed. She's more of a, you may say, beatific figure. She's a spiritual figure, and she's concerned with Dante's soul. And so she tells Virgil, "Come out of where you are. Take Dante on this journey. Now, you can't take him all the way." And so Virgil becomes Dante's guide through all of Inferno, 34 cantos, all of Purgatorio, 33 cantos. And only at the very end of that does Virgil say, I'm not allowed to go any further. I mean, I'm not saved. I can't be in paradise. I've got to leave you here, and other people will take over from me. And so Beatrice, Dante has other guides for the last part of the Divine Comedy. Now, Dante and Virgil, before they enter hell, there's a kind of caption on the gates of hell. And it's a long caption, but I'm only going to read the key sentence, probably the most famous sentence in the whole Divine Comedy. "A sign on the gate of hell, abandon all hope, ye who enter here." And this is a little bit of an insight into hell. It's an eternal place. And the suffering in hell is rendered in a way more severe by the fact that it's interminable. It never stops. And there's no hope of getting out of it. You can't say, well, yeah, it's bad now, but... And what's interesting is that Dante takes this in, and his immediate reaction is, how cruel these words. This is Dante. "Master," he says, "these words I see are cruel." So you get here the idea that Dante, and we're talking now about Dante the pilgrim, not Dante the poet, is reacting in you may say, the normal human or even liberal way. What a cruel idea on the part of God. Oh my gosh, create a place where there's no refuge. You're never going to have any hope. Wow. And interestingly, Virgil doesn't dispute him. But the reason Virgil doesn't dispute him is not because Dante is right. Virgil does not, in fact, agree. Dante the pilgrim is deluded here. Remember, he's in a dark wood. We cannot at this point, and this is part of what makes reading the poem so interesting, is we kind of feel like we got to go with Dante. Dante's reactions to things are like the way to think. No, Dante the pilgrim frequently makes mistakes, makes errors of judgment, himself falls. When he comes across sins that kind of are tempting to him or sins that he's engaged in, he's like unbelievably sympathetic. "Oh man, yeah, that you were really wronged." And all of this is a lesson for the reader that we have to separate Dante the pilgrim from Dante the poet. This is not Dante the poet's considered view. This is the pilgrim stumbling and learning along the way. And so they go past the gate and into the outer portal of hell. And the first circle, we're now like in Canto 2 and 3. And what we find in Cantos 2 and 3 is that hell at the beginning does not seem to be like that bad. Why? Because there doesn't appear to be there's no fire, there's no torture, there's no screaming or shrieking. It's very quiet. And the first group of people that Dante encounters is a group of people kind of surprising. These are, well, they're called by Dante commentators the neutrals. The neutrals. This is Virgil describing them. This wretched state of being is the fate of those sad souls who lived a life, but lived it with no blame and no praise. They are mixed with that repulsive choir of angels, neither faithful nor unfaithful to their God, who undecided stood only for themselves. So, this is the kind of person, and apparently there's an equivalent in the angelic community, who is a neutral. Listen, I'm not going to make a decision. I'm not going to go this way or that way. I'm going to stay out of this one. So this is not just I'm washing my hands off of things. This is the person who pretends to be more rational, more calculating. I'm waiting for the evidence to come in. We know people like this as agnostics. I'm not for God, but I'm not against him either. I'm just waiting for proof, Dinesh, And what Dante is getting at is these undecided, these neutrals, in not making a choice, are making a choice. Dante's point is, in the end, you do have to choose. Why? Because life is not permanent. At some point, you've got to go for it. And this, by the way, is true not just when it comes to the fate of your soul, in which when you die, all undecided votes, by the way, become no votes. But this is true in marriage. It's true in so many things. You can't say, well, you know what? I'm dating this woman. She seems nice. I really do like her. I think I might even love her. But you know what? I don't really know what the next 25 years is going to be or 50 years is going to be with her. I don't know. I'm just going to wait for the data to come in. Well, you know what? The data's never going to come in. You're never going to know for sure. At some point, you got to decide. And if you keep wavering, I'm agnostic, she's going to marry someone else. And that's going to be the end of it. So this is Dante's point. And so these neutrals they're not harmed in any way in hell, but it's sort of like they're nothing. And even Virgil says, quote, "The world will not record their having been there. Heaven's mercy and justice turn away from them. Let us not discuss them, look and pass them by." And Dante doesn't name a single one. So in a sense, the undecidedness, I won't choose, I won't take a stand, Dante identifies with you don't really matter. In fact, you're turning irrelevance into a virtue. You will not take a stand for what is right. And therefore, when time comes for judgment, the right itself will kind of turn away from you. And so this Olympian detachment that in our secular society is sometimes portrayed as a virtue, Dante says is not a virtue. Now, again, these are people, again, in the sort of, you may call it the outer room, the porch of hell. Hell, we will see, is based upon many circles, and you go deeper and deeper. And there's a kind of monster there. Dante plucks him right out of classical mythology, a monster, kind of bull with a tail, and the monster waves its tail. So when you come up for judgment, after judgment has been given, and the monsters, if he swirls his tail 5 times, off you go to the 5th circle of hell. 7 times, down you go to the 7th circle of hell. So this is where Dante will dispatch these sinners. And as we will see, what Dante does, his technique is very cool, and we'll encounter it more than once. He kind of comes into a circle, he sees a bunch of people, you get an idea from the type of topography of hell, how the punishment fits the crime, or to put it differently, how the sinners in hell are getting just what they want. Amazing. And then Dante goes from the generic, here are a bunch of people, he moves into 1 or 2 of them, and then he will often have a conversation with just one. So that is his technique of going from the big picture to the photo snapshot and then zooming in to a critical conversation that gives us a real window into the nature, not just of punishment, but also of sin itself.